Call to order the meeting, February 23rd meeting of the Noblesville Common Council. You could all rise, and Mr. Davis will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So tonight's call-in number for the meeting for anybody at home is 1-469-998-6201. When prompted, enter the conference code ID 342-631-867 hashtag. That is, the phone number is 1-469-998-6201. The conference ID, when prompted, is 342-631-867 hashtag. Ms. Lees, would you call the roll?
Mr. Ayr?
Present.
Mr. Boyce?
Present.
Mr. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. O'Connor?
Present.
Mr. Schwartz?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
Ms. Wiles? Present. Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have an approval of the amended minutes from the January 26th meeting?
So moved.
Hang on a second. We got to move to amend the minutes as presented. Sorry.
Ben?
Yeah.
President,
Yeah.
I would move that we amend the minutes as presented.
Second. There's a motion to amend the minutes from our January 26th meeting. This is a hand vote. All those in favor? Now I need a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
President, I move we approve the meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended. This is also a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Approval of the executive session memorandum, February 9th. I need a motion.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that we approve the executive session February 9th. I'm
Second.
sorry, yes, February
There's a motion to approve the executive session memorandum in a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 9-0. I need an approval of the minutes from the February 9th meeting.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes from the February 9, 2021 meeting.
Second.
A motion to approve the minutes and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Approval of the minutes from the February 13th special session.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the minutes of the February 13th special session.
Motion to approve the minutes of the February 13th special session. And a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. It's 7-0 and 2. All those in favor, 2 abstentions. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion to approve the agenda for tonight and a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Yeah, there we go. 9. Thank you. So petition by comment by citizens that are present. I have one here. I assume you would like to speak during this point in the meeting, or would you like to speak for the item? What's that?
For the streetscape,
Yeah.
I'd like to probably at the item.
Okay. I think our mayor has a few words. Mr. Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the council, good evening. Chris Jensen, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be with you. As always, I will admit I've taken a lot of pride in myself when I get up to this microphone of being brief. And tonight I'm going to go against that and spend a few minutes with you. And so I'll ask you to bear with me But I bring good news and good thoughts to share with you, so I appreciate the few minutes to speak tonight. I would like to cover 3 topics with you. First, I would like to give a special thank you to a group of people who have worked tirelessly over the last 10 days, really 30-plus days, but we'll focus on the last 10. Last week, at this very moment, most of us were probably nestled comfortably in our homes with a sore back, while our members of our street department worked tirelessly in the city of Noblesville to get 11 inches of snow removed from every street within city limits. And I can tell you within 24 hours, contrary to what you might read over social media, they had every street cleared. And that is no easy task. And I had the pleasure of riding along with some snowplows last week to experience firsthand the pleasantries and maybe at times not so pleasantries that they get to see. So Patty Johnson and her team, I would have asked them to come here tonight, but I felt like that was really unfair and really counterintuitive to what I wanted to accomplish. But I actually wanted to tell a quick story. I had a call last week from an individual at the street department that wanted to let me know that last Monday night, in the midst of the snowstorm, our street department was notified that we had a backup truck that was being repaired in downtown Indianapolis that was ready for service in the midst of the snowstorm. And Patty, who did not have to, jumped in a car and joined her team to go all the way downtown around 465 to get that truck and get it back. And they made a special point to say that she didn't have to do that, that her day had been done. She had worked her full day, but she wanted to be out there with her guys and gals clearing the streets with the street department and going down to Indianapolis to retrieve that. And I think that just speaks to the special nature of some of the amazing people we have working for the city of Noblesville. I know that you all know that. I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but I think I'd like to go on record as just thanking them. As of last Friday, they had worked 35 straight days. And so just the men and women of the Noblesville Street Department, I think, deserve a round of applause. So thank you. I also want to take a moment on my second item here to talk about a project that most of us have been engaged with for several years. You may have noticed that a lot of our engagement with stakeholders as well as design work for the Downtown Improvement Project has been kicked into high gear in recent months. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you to all of you. We had a council retreat a little over a week ago, and you all provided some incredible feedback, some incredible insight. I also want to just particularly thank members of the Downtown District Committee that I believe is this year chaired by Ms. Wiles, correct? They have spent several years on this project, so I want to thank you so much. I know any project like this is not without controversy or opinion, so I just want to appreciate the Downtown District Committee and also the members of the public who participated in that committee as well to help get that going forward. I want to also thank some key stakeholders that we really relied on through this process: Noblesville Chamber of Commerce, Noblesville Main Street, the Preservation Alliance, and Nickel Plate Arts. They really were instrumental to helping guide us, give feedback to us with us on this program. I also want to thank over 40 local businesses that we most recently met with who gave some great feedback to our concepts that we're going to address here tonight. As you on the council know and probably prod me on a little bit, I take pride, and I'm someone who is focused on taking plans and studies and putting them into action. I think this past year has shown that, and with your support, we've been able to put a lot of those plans into action. I thank you. So we set out to do just that with the Streetscape Master Plan. Someone referred to it recently as the People's Plan, and I like that because it's a plan that has been touched by many, many people over the last several years. This isn't a new plan. This is part of its origin started really in early 2018 when it was done, and it was at that time that we engaged over 800 members of the community who responded to a survey that really gave us some critical feedback on where we go with this plan going forward. We talked about downtown businesses this past fall. One of the things we wanted to really address with them was their preferred timeline. Obviously, last year was an incredibly challenging year for so many. So we asked, in light of last year's economic disruptions, and actually the overwhelming majority of them last year suggested that we move forward in 2021. So we moved forward to get that design and plans ready to go for 2021 schedule, and we decided that ended up being optimal based on all the relevant factors. So, but we also knew and we anticipated that with the evolving COVID situation and based on getting into more details with the plan, that we had to be flexible with our timeline. I always said that we have a beautiful historic downtown. underneath that beautiful historic downtown is beautiful historic infrastructure. And so as we dug into that plan a little bit, we knew that we'd have to be flexible with this. So we've learned more as we've gone into those details, as I said, particularly as it relates to the downtown infrastructure. I think it's imperative that we do this project right. This project will be around for my children, my grandchildren, and I know that we got a resounding support of that mission from you all and our stakeholders as well. So in order to successfully optimize our project outcomes, we feel that it is imperative that we shift the major construction portion of the downtown streetscape plan to early spring of 2022. We intend to still let the project this year, which will result actually in some construction cost savings, which we think is obviously a benefit to this program. We'll be moving forward this year with preparatory moves and some smaller scale steps to beautify the square, and we'll be ready to roll in early 2022 so that the project is completed in one construction season. Between now and then, we want to continue to engage with downtown merchants. That's been our goal from day one. Residents and other key stakeholders to get their feedback and explain strategies that we're pursuing to make downtown more pedestrian friendly, and also help drive more business to our valuable restaurants, retailers, and service providers. So, as we said several times, this project will not be successful without your support and without their support. So I know that's a little bit of a change that we have focused on, but it's something that we always anticipated, and we look forward to being able to start that earlier in the spring in 2022. But again, we'll still go to letting with pieces of the project here in 2021. So I wanted to give you an update on that. The third and final item I would like to talk about quickly is something that I'm really excited about, and it's the month of March in Indianapolis and in Noblesville. Normally we like to talk about the month of May in Indianapolis and Noblesville, but we're going to talk about the month of March for a minute. I am a big basketball fan. Many of us are big basketball fans, and one of the silver linings of COVID-19 is that now we have the opportunity as Central Indiana to host a major basketball tournament in the month of March. Games are going to be played at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, Lucas Oil Stadium, Hinkle Fieldhouse, Assembly Hall, Mackey Arena, and the State Fairgrounds. All eyes are going to be on Central Indiana for the better part of a month. As you may recall, late last week, the NCAA announced that they will allow up to 25% fan capacity, which we're very excited about. I'm sure some local sports fans are excited about that. We'll also have the opportunity to see thousands of players, coaches, team personnel, and fans. They'll be coming in, which should create a much-needed economic impact boom for Indianapolis as well as the surrounding communities. So even before the NCAA announced fans could attend the game, we were working on some plans of our own, which we're going to call Hoops at the Hill, to help our residents celebrate and participate in this unique event. We were approved by the NCAA to host a socially distant fan jam car parade on March 6th at Federal Hill Commons. Throughout the month, we'll be partnering with local restaurants and merchants and experience-based businesses on tournament-themed promotions and giveaways, which I'm excited about. And my favorite part, on March 20th, which is a Saturday at Federal Hill Commons, we'll be hosting a watch party there with a major TV screen, seating, fire pits, food trucks, DJ games, and a lot more, organized in a safe manner in coordination with the health department guidelines. So be looking for a press release to go out tomorrow that gives you more details about Hoops on the Hill. But I think it'll be an exciting time for folks to get outside, enjoy one of our best assets here in downtown, and also support our local economy. So we're working with Visit Indy and Hamilton County Tourism to take advantage of some of these great, unique opportunities. So again, stay tuned for all that. I apologize for taking up so much time tonight, but I felt like those were important updates to give each and every one of you. I appreciate all your support moving forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We'll move on to the council committee reports. Economic Development Committee.
Mr. President, thank you. The Economic Development Committee met February 12th. Had three things on the agenda. The first was reviewing an opportunity to provide some personal property abatement for the Old Boys and Girls Club. Had a rather lively discussion about that. Mr. Meyer purchased that property, is in the midst of doing quite a bit of renovation in the facility. It'll provide some opportunities for work sharing space and a variety of other things. The committee was agreeable to providing the abatement that we can on the personal property side, and that's all, as you know, controlled by the statutory laws that we have to follow with respect to abatements on personal property. But this is a great value add. He's painted the building. I think everybody's seen some of the improvements that have been done on the exterior. So that was one item we reviewed. The other two were related to new business rental incentive program and then the downtown residential visual improvement program. And both of these are really kind of offshoots from the facade grant program. Both are intended to continue to keep the lights on for certain property owners in downtown. And then again, with the facade program, the visual improvement, trying to provide some resources for folks to spruce up the facades on the residential front in the downtown. So those were both favorably received. I think there's some more work that's going to be done on both of those, so those will be forthcoming. But it was a good meeting, and there's quite a bit more economic development activity coming. So kudos to Mr. Murray and his staff for all the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Downtown District Committee?
Yes, the Downtown District Committee met on January 19th via Teams, since we were all kind of snowed in that day. And at that meeting, we talked about the appropriation that'll be on the agenda later on this evening that goes for the design process. So this is money that we've already been allocated to the Downtown District Fund, and it's just going to pay for that design contract. We talked about alley activation updates and with some renderings for possible archways on the East Alley. And so Ms. Arnold was able to get some feedback from the committee members, and she's going back to the artist to come up with some additional renderings, and we'll come back to the committee and then to the council. She also brought up an idea about coins for a cause, and this is something that she's seen in other communities where they've taken some old parking meters and then artists will decorate them, design them, and it's a fundraising opportunity. And so we're considering this for the Noblesville Arts Council, and so that'll be forthcoming, working in conjunction with the Arts Council. Later in the meeting, some of our community partners joined us. So that was Bob Dubois from the Noblesville Chamber, Lorna Azuki from the Noblesville Main Street, Ayla McGill from Nickel Plate Arts, and then later on, Sandy Stewart from Noblesville Preservation Alliance joined in the discussion and just talking through some of the ideas with the downtown streetscape plan that has been presented to date, gave some feedback, and then they were looking forward to being a part of the community conversations with the additional business owners later in the week. And so progress that's being made. Just as a reminder that the downtown streetscape plan, we have been working on this for many, many years. I think we started it maybe late 17, and then it was finally approved in 2018, which included a lot of community input and meetings to try to get feedback for ideas. So as the mayor said, I'm glad to see that a plan's actually being put into action, and glad that we're going to do it right and make sure that we've got the infrastructure taken care of that we need to do. So with that, that's all from the Downtown District Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Wiles. Finance Committee, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Hampton, Greg O'Connor, Megan Wiles, and myself met with the finance folks last Thursday. Andrew Murray discussed the economic development area for the Washington Business Park. Kayla Arnold discussed appropriation transfer for downtown streetscape project. Mr. Spalding talked about a request for examination according to the generally accepted accounting principles, and also he talked about review authorization to invest CDs statewide. Heather Trexler discussed cancellation of expired checks and warrants that are 2 years old.
Mr. Davis, I'm sorry to cut you off, but can you rock star it? Yeah,
There we go.
right up in your face there. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Jeff Spalding also discussed the 2022 capital development.
Mr. Davis, I'm sorry.
Still
This
on
is
it?
not
You
your,
gotta
this
pick
is,
it up.
Come on, pick it up. Stand up, do a little song.
Is that better? Can you
Is
hear
that
me
better?
now?
There, I can hear you now. All right.
Hear me now?
Sorry about that.
Jeff Spalding talked about the 2022 Capital Development Fund tax rate reset and the 2022 Fire Cumulative Capital Fund tax rate reset. And the claims docket, the claims do come to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the claims.
Second. There's a motion to approve the claims in a second. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0, passes. We'll move on to previously discussed ordinances. Council to consider ordinance 080221, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the City of Noblesville, Indiana taxable economic development revenue bonds, Series 2120, for the Nexus project, and the lending of the proceeds thereof to Nexus Apartments LLC, and authorizing and approving other actions in respect thereto. Mr. Andrew Murray.
Good evening, President Peterson, members of council, Andrew Murray, Economic Development Director. For the record, this item for you, this is an ordinance. As you'll recall from your last meeting, it's necessary to move forward with bond financing with the Nexus project and our partnership with Cityscape Residential. This is to redevelop the old marsh site off of River Road, just north of State Road 32. Since your last meeting, there have been no changes to the ordinance as written, and I have received 0 comments on this matter before you. As you recall, this item does come before you with a favorable recommendation from this council's finance committee. So I'll stop there. Happy to answer any questions, but would request that this item be approved as presented.
President,
Yes, Mr. O'Connor.
Mr. Murray, can you refresh my memory on when are they anticipating groundbreaking?
Groundbreaking will be as soon as the weather turns. We want to close on the bond financing before you by mid-March.
March, April? Good, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Murray? If not, could I have a motion to approve ordinance 080221?
Mr. President, I'd move that we approve previously discussed ordinance 08-02-21.
Second?
There's a motion to approve ordinance 080221 and a second. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Lees.
Mr. Air?
Aye.
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Hampton?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
9 ayes, 0 nay. The ordinance is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, council to consider ordinance 090221, an ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 90 of the Noblesville Code of Ordinances, Animals. Deputy Chief Shane Gannan. You're not Shane.
Mr. President, council members, I'm Deputy Chief Eric Cunningham here in place of Deputy Chief Gannan. Our department has received 0 input since the last reading of this ordinance, and there have not been any changes made. The ordinance revisions were based on some input gathered from the Hamilton County Humane Society and consulting with Hamilton County Animal Control as well.
Like some much needed moves, so thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions? No questions? Can I
Just
have?
a comment,
Yeah.
Mr. President. Please thank Shane for sending me that red line so I could actually get through it.
Yeah.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve 09-02-21.
Second. There is a motion to approve ordinance 090221 and a second. This is also a roll call vote. Ms. Lees.
Mr. Boyce? Aye. Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Hampton?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Air?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
9 ayes, 0 nay. The ordinance is adopted.
Thank you. New ordinances for discussion. Council to consider ordinance 100221, an ordinance to reestablish the cumulative capital development fund tax rate and establishing a public hearing.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
Mr. Spalding.
Yeah. Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, City Controller, and the ordinance that you have before you now is one of several you'll be hearing from me tonight about, and all are basically routine types of actions that the council as the fiscal body is required to take to kind of put the city on proper financial footing on different fronts. The first one before you is the Cumulative Capital Development Fund, and by state statute, what the fiscal body has to do every year is reestablish the rate at the current desired level that we intend to levy that tax rate for that fund. And this fund, for a number of years now, has been, the tax rate is set at 5 cents per $100 of assessed value. And what this ordinance does is it reestablishes that rate at 5 cents for pay 2022 taxes. And just real quickly, why do you have to do that? If not for taking this action, then that tax rate erodes down over time and doesn't generate the revenue that you anticipate and expect in the budget and the fiscal plan. So it's just maintaining the rate at its current level.
Thank you, Mr. Spalding. Any questions? If there are no questions, can I have a motion to establish a public hearing for ordinance 100221?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, this is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. 9-0. Thank you. Council to consider ordinance 110221, an ordinance to reestablish fire cumulative capital fund tax rate and establish a public hearing.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
Mr. Spalding.
This action is exceedingly similar to the last action, with the only difference being that for the last ordinance, it's an action the council's been doing annually for the last several years. In the case of the Fire Cumulative Capital Fund, that tax rate has not been reestablished in a number of years, and so we're deciding to put it on the same cycle as the Cumulative Capital Development Fund, and in this ordinance, we are setting that rate at 2 cents per $100 of assessed value, and the slight difference between this fund, but we already have this fund, we already have a tax rate for it. Slight difference between this fund and the other fund, you can tell to some degree, it's self-evident from the name. This fund has a more restricted use for capital equipment related to public safety, and the other fund has broader uses. But basically, what you will now see is every year, I will be bringing 2 ordinances like this to you instead of just the one.
President,
Yes, sir.
I move that we establish a public hearing for ordinance 11-02-21.
Second motion to establish a public hearing for ordinance 110221, and a second. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Council to consider ordinance 120221, an ordinance amending the city's noise ordinance.
Motion to introduce.
Second.
Bennett.
Good evening, Council. Lindsay Bennett, City Attorney. I'm here tonight on a few changes to our noise ordinance. Councilman Schwartz approached me about our noise ordinance and wanted me to take a look at it. So I did, and I realized that we actually have 2 noise ordinances, and the one that applies to most of the city need a little bit of fleshing out. So that's what this ordinance does. The second ordinance is only for the Ruoff corporate campus area, and we have left that alone. So this will pertain to everything that's outside the Ruoff corporate campus area. We made several changes just to kind of, like I said, flesh it out a little bit and add some additional exceptions. A lot of it stayed the same. We differentiated between daytime hours and nighttime hours a little bit differently. The commercial and industrial and residential zonings are still the same, just the hours are a little bit different. We've made it kind of a little bit easier, 7 to 11, 11 to 7. And also, we have fleshed out some of the exemptions, and I know that there's several there, and most of them are the same exemptions as we had in the old ordinance, but we did add some new ones. The sounds emitted from authorized emergency vehicles, burglar alarms, emergency sounds, rubbish collection from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., sounds associated with the operation of aircraft and snow removal equipment. That one is new, but also kind of ties back to an old exception. The old exception had some hourly restrictions to it. This one doesn't. I think we realized, especially in the last week, that people have to get out and get to work, and so putting a 7 a.m. restriction on that can be cumbersome for some people that have to get out at 5, 6 a.m. and start clearing their snow. Another new one is sounds associated with religious organization services, sounds associated with public speaking, public assembly from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., sounds associated with the city's street maintenance and maintenance of downtown district and events sponsored by the city. I did want to bring your attention to number 12 with building construction. I realized in rereading this that our old ordinance had building construction from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., so we might want to look at, on second reading, changing that back to 10 p.m. depending on what your thoughts are on that. I don't want to make it more restrictive than it was if what was working before, or what was in there before, was working okay. We also included some fines. That was something that was definitely missing out of our old ordinance. You had all of these restrictions and sound restrictions and no real way to enforce it. So we added enforcement by the police department or the code enforcement officer, and also put in some fines. The first offense is up to $250. The second offense within 2 years is up to $500. Third offense within 2 years is up to $1,000, and the fourth and subsequent offenses within 2 years are up to $2,500. These actually are the same as are in the Ruoff ordinance, so those are consistent. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do, Mr.
Yeah.
President. Ms. Bennett,
Mr. Hampton.
on exemption 4, I think I got the same calls that Mr. Schwartz did concerning like a party barn that's out, I think, on Cumberland Road, and it's really close to some residences. And I'm just reading that exemption. I'm not sure if that, it says that basically the including, not limited to, and goes on, and then it goes to say concerts, artistic performances, and I'm wondering if that ordinance, is it doing enough for that area? If you, I think you're familiar. You and I have had this conversation too.
Yeah, I am familiar with that area. I believe that's in the county.
It is.
And
It's
so
kind of there's a crisscross right there, where some of it's city, some of it's county.
If the sound is emitting from a property that is within municipal boundaries, we would have enforcement authority on that. If it's a property that is in the county, we wouldn't, even if it affects a city property. But to your concern, the event would have to be authorized by the Board of Public Works in writing before it would meet the exemption. So just an everyday event at somebody's party barn, unless it's authorized.
If they have a wedding, they have to get that authorization to be able to play the music.
I have not seen anything go before the Board of Public Works for.
Wouldn't think so. That has
like
been
that.
kind of the issue. It's.
Yeah, and so for that particular property, I would say that that would not fit within the exemption unless they had some kind of event that was authorized by the Board of Public Works. And I go to every Board of Public Works meeting. I've not seen any events come through for any party barns.
Okay.
And if it is on county property, it wouldn't anyway.
The other question I have is about just the enforcement. If a private citizen has a gauge that says, hey, look, they're over, but the authorities don't, if the noise stops when the authority, how is it going to balance as
Yes.
to whose meter is right?
Yeah, our police department does have a sound level meter that they would use in this situation, and we would definitely go off of our sound level meter. I would have to check with Mr. Cunningham, who was instrumental in helping with this ordinance also, and see how they calibrate that, but I would assume that they are calibrated and trained, and that would be something that I would feel comfortable taking in front of the city court judge to enforce. I wouldn't really feel comfortable taking somebody's sound level meter that they got off Amazon and taking it to Judge Cook and asking him to find somebody based on that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Quick question on the ordinance or the fines. I appreciate you putting in the fines. They seem, if you're having a party and selling, these fines are light enough for a business that it may be worth it to go ahead and pay the fine and go ahead and continue to party. So that's one question, but it seems a little steep for residents. So I don't know if we can do a tiered, two levels if it's on coming from a business or if it's coming from residents.
So I think what you're saying is you'd like to see a penalty for maybe a residential property versus a commercial or industrial property. Okay. I can make that change for second reading. I also have an additional change that I wanted to make you aware of before second reading. Right now, I have this amending section 159.203. Our planning department pointed out to me earlier that this is actually part of the UDO, which includes a lot of additional steps with Plan Commission in order to make changes to our UDO. So what I'm going to propose for second reading is going back to Chapter 93, which is where that Ruoff corporate campus ordinance is, and just differentiating between that and this within that chapter so that we're not messing with the UDO. It's under a chapter called nuisances. I think it's more appropriate under that chapter anyway. So I just wanted you to be aware on second reading, I am going to, with your permission, change that over to Chapter 93. And I will address the penalty as well.
Chair.
I think, Mr. Hampton, with regarding your question and your location, and I think we've run across this on several different issues, especially Connor Street. We don't have jurisdiction outside of our corporate limits, and I'm pretty sure the party barn you're talking about is outside, and if you could hear it all the way in the city limits, which are a good half-mile away, I would hope the county has a noise ordinance that maybe they could enforce with it.
I think it's interesting if it's coming from outside the city, it doesn't matter how loud it is.
Well,
Even if it affects local citizens, because it's in the county, our ordinance won't.
Yeah, the county does have a noise ordinance. I would suggest that that property owner maybe call the sheriff and have the sheriff come out with their.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's just nothing that
Yeah.
we can do for that particular property.
Thank you, Mr. Aaron. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Council to consider ordinance 130221, an ordinance enacting and adopting a supplement to the Code of Ordinances. Ms. Lees.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
Good evening. This is the evening for routine ordinances. Mr. Spalding had a few, and this is one that we do every year. The ordinances that were passed in 2020 and the resolutions are being incorporated into the city's Code of Ordinances by law, and this is your official act to adopt those into the Code of Ordinances. Now, it is kind of an old-fashioned thing because once an ordinance is passed and I send it to American Legal Publishing, it gets incorporated into our online ordinance right away. But sometimes the process has a little lag in catching up, and we still need to do this adopting ordinance. It has been reviewed by the city attorney. And if you would, I would appreciate if you could pass this on first reading.
Are there any questions for Ms. Lees?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd make a motion that we approve ordinance 13.
Hang on a second.
Oh,
You know, suspend the rules.
I need a motion.
That's what he's
That's
We
what
don't
I
have
was
any
gonna do.
questions.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said to approve it. We need to waive the rules first.
That's what I was gonna make a
Okay,
motion to
sorry.
waive the rules and pass on first reading.
Second.
There's a motion to waive the rules and approve this on the first reading of ordinance 130221 and a second. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Okay, now,
President, make a motion, we approve ordinance 13-02-21.
motion to approve ordinance 1302-21 and a second. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Lees.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Hampton?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Ayer?
Aye.
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
Aye, 0 nay. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Council to consider introductory information for the proposed Silo Ridge Plan Development containing 155 acres located adjacent to the northwest intersection of East 166th Street and Bowden Road. Mr. Harden.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the City Council. It's very nice to see you all in person. I hope you all are well. I'm here representing MI Homes today, and from MI Homes with me is Mr. Keith Blaze and Mr. John Isaacs. They are there and there, both Noblesville residents. Also, Noblesville native Sam Swafford from our office is here as well. There's Sam right there. Any tough questions that you have, Sam has volunteered to answer those for us tonight. This project, we're really excited to be here tonight. Particularly John Isaacs and Keith Blaze have been working with your administration and your staff for quite some time on this development project in collaboration. Let's see here. So this is 177 acres located at the northwest corner of Bowden Road and 166th Street. It's right, let me give you some orientation here. So this is located, here's Finch Creek Park. We've got a number of residential neighborhoods all surrounding this area. And then across the street here, State Road 38, across the street is the planned sanitary sewer treatment plant. The existing gravel pit that you can see when you drive by, and also when you look at an aerial. The IMI also owns a lot of the land along here. There's an existing asphalt plant. And then IMI also has owned for a little while some land on this side of State Road 38. And then on December 31st, I think it was, of 2020, just a month or two ago, they closed and acquired, the gravel pit acquired the property right here across from Finch Creek Park, as well as across from the Whitecroft Farm property that's right here. It's probably not surprising that they had interest. There's a water tributary running through this property. Often when you see creeks or legal drains that have, typically they're rich in rock, soil, or rock, gravel, sand, things like that. My understanding from John Isaacs is that there's also been soil studies done on this property, the Whitecroft property, which also has similar minerals, gravel, stone, rock, things like that. So just to put that in context, there is this growing industrial use around this area. When we first began, the IMI did not own the property immediately across the street here or across from Finch Creek Park. So part of the idea from the very beginning was to work on how to make this area a really terrific gateway into the city as you enter into this area, particularly with the plans for Finch Creek Park. And as those discussions have continued over the last many months, one of the ideas came about in talking with the administration and the Parks Department and the Planning Department was, is there a way to consider swapping some of the land that was right here on the Whitecroft Farm property for some of the land that was tucked back in behind on the park land, to be able to provide more parkland that would be much more visible, easy to access, and provide a gateway feel for this area. And so you'll be hearing more about that swap and the plans for the park area as we go through here in the coming weeks. But that's where the plan is today. And then the site plan, the concept plan that you'll see on this part down here, when we turn to that, that was based upon the city's proposed plan for what that southern area would look like. So the concept plan that you have here in our package has incorporated what the city's plan was and request was for how that southern part would look like. So obviously one of the benefits of this development would be to bring residential to kind of protect that area from continued industrial development that is happening in that corridor. Some of the key aspects of the plan itself is that we have a mixture of uses. So the comprehensive plan that was just adopted in 2020 encouraged a mixture of housing types, a variety of housing types. We've got 4 different types. We have 2 single-family, we have townhomes, and we also have paired villas. And so we're happy to talk more about that as we go through the project. We have about a mile of paved trails. We have 6 miles of sidewalk. And then as you can see down through here, there are some planned areas for connections. There's 2 neighborhoods. If I flip back to this area, you'll see as we get into the more details with the park and how to incorporate that into this area, there are trails connecting into Summerlin Park, as well as trails providing connection to Flagstone Woods to provide them access to the park as that comes along. This previously, on I believe the master plan for Finch Creek Park previously showed an outdoor event center and parking lot adjacent to Summerlin Park. So we'll be providing a buffer area, trail connectivity, and the parking lot will go away, and that would be relocated elsewhere. So let's see what other things. Those are the highlights of it. We've got a handful of different exhibits in the packet for you as well. I'll just run through those. We have the paired villas, which are intended to be attractive for empty nester home buyers. Those are expected to run between $230,000 and $290,000. You can see where that's located in this area. Then we have area B and B1, or these 2 areas here. Those are the single-family detached, with home prices expected to range from $260,000 to $340,000, with an average around $300,000. We have the townhomes that are up here along State Road 38, across from the industrial uses. Those townhomes are expected to range between $220,000 and $260,000, with an average around $240,000. And then we have single family that is down here in the south of 166th Street, with homes expected to range currently right now between $340,000 and $420,000, with an average of around $380,000. And that's continued to be looked at as well as we move forward. So as I mentioned, this is the informal presentation tonight. We have continued work to do as we move through the process. We anticipate being back in front of you with some more discussions on the park improvements and the plan for that. But we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have tonight for us. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Mr. Harden or Jonathan Isaacs? Questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Miscellaneous number 1, council to consider receipt of the annual report of expired warrants pursuant to IC 511-10.5 for the fiscal year ending December 31st. Heather Trexler.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of council. I'm Heather Trexler, Chief Accountant for the City of Noblesville. Again, this is a routine item that we normally would do pursuant to IC 5-11-10.5. We need to do this, present this to open council by March 1st. These are checks that were written in 2018 that are now 2 years old, and we need to void those and put those funds back to the fund where they were originally issued from. We have tried to contact all check holders, and we have either working with them now or we have not been able to contact them. Obviously, if they do come to us by seeing this, we are more than happy to issue the check if indeed they are due the funds. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Miscellaneous number 2, council to consider resolution RC 1021, a resolution authorizing the investment of public funds pursuant to IC 513-9-5. Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, again, Jeff Spalding, CFO and Controller, and again, another routine item. This actually, though, is a little change from the past in that the renewal cycle on this used to be once every 2 years, and state law changed, and now it's annually you renew this. And so what we have in place now is an authorization that when we are seeking to make deposits of city funds One of the things that this ordinance allows you to do is to have a broader market to shop for interest rates statewide, and that current authorization expires on March 1, and so approving this resolution would extend it another year to March 1, 2022.
Are there any questions for Mr. Spalding?
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor?
I'd move that we approve Resolution RC-10-21.
Second.
There's a motion to approve Resolution RC 1021 and a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Motion passed. Miscellaneous number 3, council to consider Resolution RC 1121, a resolution authorizing the audits and examinations of financial statements prepared on the generally accepted accounting principles, basis pursuant to IC 511-130. Mr. Spalding.
Yes, again, this is routine, although maybe I should say it this way, new but routine. So this is an item that has not been brought before this council prior to tonight, but what is the routine aspect of this is that the city of Noblesville has for 30-plus years prepared its official financial statements on a GAAP basis, generally accepted accounting principles basis, and due to a series of recent changes in state law, the State Board of Accounts, who is our auditors, has now established, or maybe is more clearly enforcing, a requirement that for entities like us that prepare our financial statements on this basis, that the fiscal body has to adopt a resolution authorizing me to request an audit on this, of our financial statements on this same basis. And you're wondering, well, why does that even matter? Don't they just audit things? Well, the difference is this basis of accounting is more sophisticated and complex than many local units of government undertake. And so the reason for this requirement from the State Board of Accounts is they want to manage their workload with their auditors, because they know that when they're going to audit an entity like us, that will require more manpower and staff time. So that's basically the ins and outs of this. And we have to have this in place by March 1, so that's why it's on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Spalding?
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor?
I move we approve Resolution RC-11-21.
Second.
There's a motion to approve Resolution RC 1121 and a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you. Miscellaneous number 4, council to consider Resolution RC 1221, a resolution authorizing the transfer of real estate to the Noblesville Redevelopment Commission. Amy Smith.
Good evening. For the record, I am Amy Smith with Economic Development. Before you is a resolution authorizing the transfer of ownership for a property that the city owns located at 15197 Howe Road to the Redevelopment Commission. The intent is to solicit offers through the public offering process and ultimately dispose of the property. Excuse me. This property was purchased by the city in February of 2012 to allow for multi-use path and widening of Howe Road. There's in your packet a location map of where the property is. The property is about 1.16 acres and currently zoned corporate campus plan development with single-family residential as the land use. The site is currently vacant and has been since shortly after being acquired. Economic Development has vetted this internally with all the departments, and there is no public need for this real estate. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have and would ask for your approval on this resolution.
Any questions for Ms. Smith?
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor?
I move we approve Resolution RC-12-21.
Second.
There's a motion to approve Resolution RC 1221 and a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0, passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Transfer number 1, council to consider transfer TA 0221, an appropriation transfer in the Downtown Development Fund for downtown streetscape design costs. Sam Barris.
Thank you, council members. Sam Barris with OFA staff. This item is a fairly straightforward appropriation transfer from non-departmental contingency to Department 026 Street Improvement and Rehabilitation for them to move forward some of the design work related to the streetscaping project that was referenced earlier this night by Mayor Jensen and Councilor Wiles. As you will probably recall, Council appropriated $425,000 out of the Downtown Development Fund to non-departmental contingency in the original budget, and that money gets doled out throughout the year as based on recommendations from the Downtown District Committee. So if there's any questions about the fiscal action, happy to answer those. If there's questions about the streetscaping plan more generally, I would probably defer to the mayor's office.
Are there any questions for Mr. Barris?
I just had one, and maybe this is more for the administration. Just for my own knowledge and for public record, tonight's action is only about transferring funds, not anything to do with a final design of this streetscape.
That is correct. This is funding to move forward the design work. It doesn't specify anything about the contents of what the final design will be.
You want to add something?
I don't know how to clarify that anymore. It's under transfer. It's just simply for the design work, correct?
Thank you.
We did have two people who would like to speak. Thank you. Cheryl? Shauna Metzger, would you like to still speak? She had her question answered in the mayor's speech, but came all this way, so.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you know what? We're thrilled to see all of you here tonight. There are so many nights when this place is completely empty that it's awesome to see all of you here, so thank you.
Well, I need to read my instructions here. So I am Shauna Metzger, and I own Little Bloomers Children's Boutique at 876 Logan Street in Noblesville, Indiana. And I just had a few questions, and once again, I'm not even sure just because of the presentation and how this agenda was strictly for the transfer of funds versus like the actual design plan. But just to put it on the record, since I am here, I have talked to several people. I think Darren is my best friend, and he owes me a couple margaritas, right? Yeah. Yeah. If you can save parking, I will owe you margaritas. Okay. So, one of the things, yeah. So, one of the things is I was kind of looking at the room, and I was trying to see who had actually been at the 2018 streetscape plan, because I actually was there. And to be honest with you, I had not heard anything about it since that initial meeting. In fact, I remember Kayla coming in to a Main Street meeting, and I said, hey, have you heard anything about streetscape? And she was brand new at the time, and she was just like, no, but we're starting to have meetings about it. So up until Friday, which was when my meeting was, thank you guys for putting that on, I had not seen any other plans other than those plans that were put in front of me in 2018. Now, to go back to 2018, the plans that I saw looked absolutely nothing like the ones that we saw on Friday, or the ones that I saw on Friday. I think everybody else saw them on different days, but the ones I saw on Friday. The plans that I saw had like a bike path and like bump outs, and we weren't losing near the amount of parking that we're losing in this new plan. Sorry, I'm really nervous. I don't know why. Maybe because my daughter's watching me stand up for what I believe in, right? One of the things that, like, when we opened our business, we put in a business plan and we talked to the Small Business Administration, and they told us, like, location, 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 right? So, of course, Noblesville, right? This is where my heart is. This is where my kids go to school. Up until opening the store, I worked for the trustee's office, as once again, as Darren knows, because I helped him with several projects. You owe me big time. But what we learned was, it's about location, accessibility, and visibility, right? Like, so when you design your business plan, when you set up your business, those are the three key factors. And when I looked at the plan on Friday, I felt like we were losing not only our visibility, but our accessibility. And I talked to Aaron and Darren about this. I saw a huge loss of upfront parking, which is completely major to my business. And I'll just give you a few reasons why. I'm not following my notes at all. But right now, in the world that we live in, like we're in COVID-19, right? We're getting better, but it's still there. But we've created this extremely accessible environment, right? Like you can order something from Kohl's and go pick it up in 1 hour. Right out front, they will bring it to your door. Well, it's the same thing at Little Bloomers, right? Somebody orders something, they will pull up in front of my store in 1 hour, and I have to walk it out. If I don't have spaces in front of my store, I can't walk that out. I can't, even now I'm having to walk all the way to Sid's most of the time to hand people their products. The other thing is we're losing, several of us stores kind of geared towards an older crowd, and with the lack of parking up front of the stores, we're taking away the option for them to come into our shops. So I can think, actually Kate Baker, I'm sure everybody knows Kate Baker, right? Her mom is a major customer of mine, and she is on a walker or a cane, and there's no way she'd be able to walk either from the Levingston or from whatever goes up behind me into my shop. And so I just feel like it's important that we don't rule out those people. The other thing that I would ask of the city is to maybe show us some data that shows that this plan is actually going to work for our environment. Like I'm curious to know if anybody knows how many businesses there are above in the second floors, how many businesses there are on the bottom floors, how many people access both county buildings on a daily basis. Because I think those are numbers that we need in order to create an accessible parking plan. The one spaces that were on Logan that I saw, I can just see the county people using them all day long, just people going in to pay their taxes or going to court because they have to pay a speeding ticket or whatever the case is. I didn't see any of those spaces accessible to my customers or anybody on my street. I think I'm supposed to say, somebody texted me, I'm supposed to say, for the record, merchants did not agree, nor did we ever see a plan up until this week about losing up to 75% of our upfront parking. Other than that, like I said, I love Noblesville. I would just like for the city possibly to take that into consideration, and council when it goes before you, when you see the final plan, just to take into consideration like those people, those of us that need those upfront parking. And then, sorry, oh, I said give examples. Huh, I did that already. Oh, I think that's about it. So I think that's all I have to say. Did I miss anything? No? Okay, all right, I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
How's your mom do? She do okay? She got all her points out? Okay. I'm sure she practiced on the drive over here, so.
Well, I told her, at first I was like, I shouldn't bring her to this, it's not appropriate, but I didn't have a choice, right? Because as parents often do, that's what happens. But I'm like, no, it's important for her to stand up what I believe in. Whether
Great
it's
civics
right or
lesson.
wrong, it's just what I get, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm back.
Well, we look forward to continuing this engagement with the community. There's going to be more meetings like this, more meetings like the one we had on Sunday, and I look forward to all this feedback. Just a reminder, the design is at 30%, so there's still a lot of time for input and feedback, and we appreciate everybody coming out tonight and all your input. This is how stuff gets done. So,
You need a motion for...
well, is anybody
else going to speak?
Want to speak?
Yeah, is anybody else? Well, Cheryl declined after, yeah.
Okay.
Hers said she would like to delay, so I think that was addressed earlier. Anybody else want to speak? We're on a roll. Okay. If no one else would like to speak, does anybody have any questions for Sam? You want to answer some parking questions, Sam?
He's going to defer to the mayor's office.
Okay, then I need a motion to approve transfer TA 0221.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion to approve transfer TA 0221 and a second. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Are there any council comments? Mayor's office, would you like to speak again?
I just have one.
Mr. Hampton.
Just thoughts and prayers with the Russell family. We lost Mitch Russell. He passed away. Was it today or last night?
Today.
Was it today?
Today.
And just friendliest guy.
Great public
I can remember, yeah, great public servant, and I remember one of my, I had a moment with him at the Hamilton County Fairgrounds one time when we were out there at the GOP tent. We were both working the tent at the same time, and Mitch came up and smiles all day long for like the 3-hour, 4-hour shift. Everybody knew him, and it was just, it's a real big loss for our community, for us to lose Mitch Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Any other comments? If none, we are adjourned.